long time ago. I don't know who said that, but I'm not going with that particular thing because I think Keturah is sort of the most ignored part of. I mean, Friedman even says that she's one of the most ignored persons,
Yes.
females in the Bible. He says that in the commentaries, and I think that when you think about that, you look at Midian, for instance. Well,
yes, very important.
What do we know about Midian? Well, there's Jethro, there's Moses's wife. There's all these things going on here that I think are really important in the greater story. You know,
Yes.
the greater storyline is huge here. And so to me, this whole thing is, all about how the lines are working, how it comes together when it comes to all these things with the Jewish people, maybe some of the Jewish people's enemies, this kinship between these nations. All those things are all a part of these 6 verses. So that's my take on the first 6 anyway.
I think that's very important. Also, the Midianites were well known for trading in frankincense. Okay, that I found out, and that you hit on a theme that is going to be very important. That comes up. Remember, Jethro, I believe, is also a Midianite.
Yes,
and believes in God. We're told that in Exodus. So there's a lot to this that overlaps in the stories. You hit a nail on the head there. Rabbi Roman and then Steve.
Well, I just wanted to add two thoughts. One is that the other word, Rabbi Miri had said that the east word is Mizracha, but it's also Kedem, it's also Kadima, which to the east. I mean, they couldn't go to the west because that's the Mediterranean Sea.
Ocean.
And Kedem could also just be, going forward, going on. In a Kadima is in a particular direction, and the direction, it seems to be in the direction of the known trade routes. Like
Right.
You say, if the Midianites were involved in frankincense and whatever it was, that was the direction. They weren't going to go towards Egypt because that was enemy territory. They weren't necessarily going to go north because that was brutal weather. So if they went eastward, it would be going forward,
Okay.
going on to their own direction.
All right. Thank you. That's also very interesting. Steve.
Yeah, I just had, I looked up that root in the etymological dictionary here. So I just wanted to share that a little bit. And actually, I had forgotten at the time, but in modern Hebrew, Qatar is an engine at the head of a train, like choo-choo, and so Qatar, the root actually means smoke, to make sacrifices, smoke, to turn something into.
Yeah, Torah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, related to Aramaic, kutra, which is smoke, or Arabic. There's also katara, which in Arabic is an exhaled odor or something smoked, exhalation and so on. Okay, so it's all that kind of, and then, it's burning incest or making sacrifices that smoke. It's also here to, Keter is also incense, okay, which appears in the Bible. And the same root is often, we get a little complicated because the same root is also used for something totally unrelated or apparently unrelated. Same root is to bind. Related to Hebrew, kesher. Every once in a while you could even switch letters. That makes things interesting. So I guess the tet gets switched with a sheen, I don't know why, but, and then it's like kesher, to bind.
Yes, Rabbi Mary.
And this is again the modern Hebrew. When you say something, he is a kuter, Kuterai is like he's a nudnik,
That's right. Now, where does that come from?
or complaining.
That might be Yiddish. Is that something in Yiddish?
Kuter, probably.
Yeah. Maybe.
Well, I think that any further discussion on this, because I just think that this is very important. I remember in years past, it was always said, well, because we can't pronounce the names, we would look, the other way. That frequently came up in discussion. But this year, we have spent a lot of time going over all of these names, even though they're hard to pronounce, and we find some
They all mean something.
That's right. They wouldn't be here if they weren't important.
Yeah, if I may, in the Orthodox, I believe the rabbi would bear me out on this. In the Orthodox, those names they're never discounted, that they're always read because of the importance. They're never left out. They're difficult to pronounce, especially people who are not familiar with these names. And they, I know in the Orthodox, they are always mentioned, always
Sure.
mentioned.
Okay. Any further? Very good, Michael. Yes, Chris. Chris, you're muted. You're muted, Chris.
Okay, thank you.
There you go.
I noticed the book is names in the names appears Enoch. Is that the Enoch that walked with God? Is that the same Enoch
What name?
that says that he walked with God and he became no more?
That's several generations preceding.
Right. But I
Okay,
just
so this is someone with the same name.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, but yes, I think it's interesting to know that certain people, certain names tend to be repeated from generation to generation. It's probably honoring those who are revered in a family.
Exactly.
But also, there is tradition that when you do that, you are hoping that the qualities of that other person is going to show up in the current generation.
Okay.
Yes, Pastor Bruce.
One more thing I was kind of noticing that maybe this is a maybe, and I'll ask anybody else to weigh in on this, is that it seems as if we were talking about all these people being sent off to the east, but Isaac wasn't sent off to the east, and it seems to me that with Abraham knowing that the heir of his tradition was going to be Isaac, he didn't want everybody else that he fathered, he didn't want them to be around the one that was chosen to be the heir of his tradition.
Very good.
I don't know if that's a true statement or just something I was thinking of.
No, but it's an important concept. What happens when you are around people who have a different way of looking at things, in this case, life or spirituality?
A lot of people become what who you hang around. You can hang around, you can choose to hang around people that are like yourself and have like ideas, or you can choose to hang around people that are dragging you a different direction.
Okay. Any other comments? Rabbi Roman.
I'm just wondering where in that whole list of Abraham's descendants, where's Ishmael?
Yeah.
Well,
I think he's getting ready to bury Abraham.
He is. We'll see him in the next paragraph.
It's really interesting, isn't it?
This is only, it gives the lists of the children of Keturah. It gives the names of the children, at least the sons, through the other concubines, but not Hagar, and
Yeah.
Ishmael. Mhm.
Well, that has been done before
of course,
in earlier reading,
Yeah.
that we have encountered Ishmael's progeny and so forth. So that would have been related to Hagar or Hagar. But now this is Keturah, who is another one. Does that
Right.
ring a bell in another story? It just popped into my mind since we're talking about concubines. Is there any one of our patriarchs, I'll sort of narrow it down for everyone, that has a similar type of experience? Yes, Rabbi Mary.
Well, there is something regarding concubines that we tend to ignore, and in my movement, we tend to say their name, which is Bilhah and I remember the other one, which are mothers.
Zilpah.
Say that again.
Zilpah.
And Zilpah. That they are women, concubines, that gave birth to sons that become tribes. But we
Yes.
say them, our foremothers, Rachel, Rivka, Sarah, and Leah, and we don't say the concubines that are very important in that case.
That's true. No, it's a good point. It's another good point. Any further comments so far?
Hi, this is Grace.
Oh,
Just briefly, Abraham dies at 175 years of age. So he had been busy prior to
yeah.
prior to, you know, his promise that he would have a son from God, and God had told him, you know, I'm going to replenish the earth with your descendants. Your descendants are. So I'm just thinking that God is honoring contract in so many different ways. That's just my thought process at the moment. But I've been reading in between. Okay, I'm just reading in between, my little cheat sheet here in the middle of my study book, my study Torah. So thank you for letting me comment.
You're welcome. Well, Grace has started us on the further reading here. If somebody would like to read from verse 7.
Incidentally,
yes, Rabbi.
Just wanted to say in Grace's defense, there's an old Talmudic saying, there ain't no cheating when it comes to Torah.
Thank you, Rabbi Norman.
Well, we may get to that, Rabbi. You may want to repeat that statement again.
Or reform it.
So starting with verse 7, if somebody would like to
I'd
pick
be
up.
happy to read.
Oh, thank you, David.
Okay. And these are the days of the years of Abraham's life which he lived, 160 years. And Abraham expired and died in a good old age, an old man and full of years, and was gathered to his people. And Isaac and Ishmael, his sons, buried him in the cave of Machpelah, in the field of Ephron, the son of Zohar the Hittite, which is before Mamre, the field which Abraham purchased of the children of Heth. There was Abraham buried, and Sarah his wife. And it came to pass after the death of Abraham that God blessed Isaac his son, and Isaac dwelt by Beer Lahai Roi.
Okay. We can discuss a few things. Why is it important to repeat what we have read already?
I think one of the interesting things is that in verse 9, when they say that Isaac and Ishmael, his sons, and this is very early, very, very long ago, they're showing the beginning of the relationship between the Jews and the other Arab, other Semitic religions right there. And I'm sure that that little phrase, Isaac and Ishmael, were together. We could use a little bit of that now, I think.
And that they both seemingly forgive Abraham.
Yes.
Yes. Both have horrible experiences. Let's put it that way. And yes, they come together. Very good point, David, and thank you, Rabbi. Yes, Pastor Bruce, you had a comment.
Just as I was looking at some different kind of commentaries about this verse 8 seems to have pages and pages and pages versus the rest of them have little tiny things. But a couple things that I noted was the idiomatic expression of gathered to his kin. I thought that was a really interesting thing describing. It's described in lots of people's lives, but then one of the comments goes further on with Isaac later, that Abraham and Isaac, this is interesting, are the only individuals in Torah described as dying contented. In this sense, Abraham and Isaac, they're the ones that have said they died contented. I thought that was an interesting. I'd be interested to hear what everybody else has to say about that, and that's all I have a question about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rabbi?
There is a midrash, Bruce, that picks up on the word contented, that he was contented, both Abraham and Isaac, because, and the midrash fills in the missing link, that in both cases that the two sons reconcile with each other and with their father in his presence before he died, like a deathbed kind of thing. That's how the midrash interprets their dying in a contented way.
And I love that because shouldn't in any given person's life, anybody, if you have strife with people as you're going out of life, that's not a contented feeling. Right. So this is good. I like it. Thank you.
Don't thank me. Thank the commentators from hundreds and thousands of years ago. Don't thank me.
And yes, Gail, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I was just wondering about the phrase, the translation, and gathered to his people. How does the Hebrew read? Or
Yeyaseh el amav. We see it several times. Aaron, same thing when Aaron dies. He's gathered to his people. It's euphemistic,
That your echo. Yes, Steve first. Yes.
Yep. I'm questioning it. It is sort of not meant to be taken literally here because, but in some cases they did, like ancient burial practices involved sort of gathering up the bones and sometimes transporting them to somewhere else, to an ancestral homeland, to a tomb. There was I guess it was like definitely at least through the Maccabean period they were ossuaries. They would just you would gather up the bones at some point and then put the bones somewhere, and perhaps in a very large family plot, hence you're gathered to your ancestors. You can also take it literally.
Yes, Pastor Bruce.
Sorry, I was going to shut up, but I just thought, that's really interesting because you can take, like Steve just said, there's the burying you know, and some people bury on top of each other's family plots and all those kind of things. That's part of it, but that wasn't what was necessarily happening here, although there was I guess a cave for, you know, with Abraham and Sarah that we can see when we go to Hebron. You know, I think that's all there. But I was also really reading some commentaries that there's a distinct, and again, I don't know which sects of Judaism believe this way, but there's an afterlife thought for some sects of Judaism. And in the time, since I'm a pastor, in the days of Jesus, there was two sects. I think they were believed called Pharisees and Sadducees. One believed in the resurrection and the afterlife, and one didn't. And so, in the middle of all this, I guess that particular question comes up as well, all the way through here.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I have several. Okay. Yes, Rabbi.
Yeah, I just wanted to add the homiletic interpretation, to be gathered unto one's people.
Mm-hmm.
It is a way of finding immortality in the sense that your deeds, your reputation, your actions are now being brought into the souls and the lives of those who survive you, those who live on. So your essence has now been gathered into them in what they do, and hence you live on that way. It's another in homiletic interpretation of the immortality question.
Right. I have two more commentaries. We've already mentioned all the different things in the commentary, but one, the phrase "old and contented," it is not the longevity of Isaac, but the quality of his life.
Of Abraham.
Of Abraham, I mean, of Abraham.
Mm-hmm.
And the other is that with the phrase "gathered to his kin," I'm not going to read all of this because we have mentioned in all of the discussions, we have mentioned all of these aspects of the phrase. So I won't bring that up. But
Martin,
yes, Rabbi Fleming.
Content, it's not exactly the word. It's what's the word for English?
Satisfied.
Satisfied. When you finish eating and
Sure.
I'm satisfied. Just for kind of that. So maybe he goes back and he says, okay, I did good, not too bad. And Nesaf is gathering, but also the gathering of Abraham, because it's in plural, Nesaf, not Nesfu, in as if gather here, but being satisfied. It's like I hope that when I die, I can say, I'm satisfied with what I did. I don't want to say, oh, I would have liked to do this and this, but what he did was okay.
Yeah. It was enough.
Yeah.
Could it also be
Yeah.
fulfilled? His life was fulfilled. What God had said that he was going to do, he pretty much completed his task in life.
Yes.
I think that's fulfillment.
I guess I have.
Any further? Oh, yeah, yes, Helene.
I'm listening carefully, and every time I read anything, it's over and over, it talks about those who believe in reincarnation, those who believe that there's a life after death. And the reforms don't talk about that very much, do they? Help me.
We don't believe in it.
Thank you.
Actually, in the Sidur, it was changed, which I don't agree, that says, Bore et no, it's regarding the dead. Mechaye metim. the Siddur says Mechayeh Metim, which means makes the dead alive. And in the Reform, not now, I think that now we are changing it. We said make
Mechayeh hakol.
Chayei hakol, yeah.
everything.
Yes.
Hakol.
Say it again.
Hakol. Because of not believing in resurrection.
Okay, thank you. I needed to hear that. Thank you.
We say that in the Sabbath prayers.
Mhm.
We say in the daily prayers.
In parentheses,
But
the daily and Sabbath. But in our whenever we read from our prayer book on the Sabbath, it's always
Right.
in parentheses.
right,
Nita.
I need to clarify one thing because Helene said reincarnation, and I'm not sure if you meant reincarnation or resurrection. Because
I
there
meant
certainly have been times when when mainstream Judaism, as Bruce was saying, did accept resurrection, but we've never had reincarnation.
Okay.
That the soul would come back in some other form. That's never been part of Judaism.
Okay.
Yeah.
Only
Okay,
Orthodox.
thank you for the correction.
No, not even Orthodox. Not reincarnation. Resurrection, that the soul would be brought alive again, but in the same form, or some, but not like if you're a good person, you come back. I don't know, as what should I say? You know,
A
but if
tree-
you're not a
That's
good person, you come back as a frog, or
That's one of the reasons that we don't believe in cremation.
And what?
Cremation.
cremation.
Let's not go there.
that's a whole other thing now. Right.
Except to say that I do know of some people, of some Jewish people who not necessarily believe in reincarnation, but at least are willing to discuss it and suggest it. And that is increasingly popular among modern Jews.
Yes.
No question. I'm
Modern
referring to mainstream thinking and quote unquote official policy.
Yeah, exactly.
Rabbi Mary again.
Well, and resurrection comes from Ezekiel that gathers
Dry bones.
And one more thing is that, those that are in Israel are going to be resurrected first. Therefore, many people take soil from Israel when they are buried in America and they take it with them. So they are going to be in the soil of Israel. But yeah, it is the Ezekiel has been quoted as resurrection.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Pastor Bruce.
Just one more thing about this, that I was looking up some more scriptures, like Ezekiel is a good example. Deuteronomy 30 says, I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life. And Ruth Ann, what was the name of your synagogue? Tree of Life?
No, mine was New Light. Your Tree of Life or La Simcha was the building.
Oh, the building.
Where the three congregations were
Okay.
at. And that was a merger of a Tree of Life was a congregation in and of itself, and the Or La Simcha was another one, and they merged. So it was Tree of Life or La Simcha.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Pastor, there were in the Gan Eden, in the Garden of Eden, there were two trees. One was Tov V'Ra, good and bad, the knowledge, what people call it knowledge, which is not right. It's the knowledge of good and bad.
Good and evil, yes.
Of life and death.
Yes.
So they didn't eat that one. So they had the knowledge, but tree of life, that was the one picked. The tree of life, not the tree of death. And that's why we don't live forever.
Yes, David.
Yeah, one of the things that my source regarding the reincarnation thing says is the idea is that each time you come back, then you are supposedly a better person, a better version of yourself. Hold on, Wendy will talk.
I'm David's local. Can you hear me?
Yes, Wendy,
Okay.
we
Yes,
hear you.
I'm way back when in the 80s when New Age thinking became the big thing. I did a lot of reading just for information because that makes things a lot clearer sometimes. And the New Age thinking on reincarnation was this. It was all based on karma, which means the balance between good things you do and bad things you do. And the whole thing is to come out at zero. Well, what happens is this. They say Earth is the learning school, and you make all your mistakes on Earth, and when you die and go up to heaven, your soul, yes, is living on, and it is learning things, and then you go back to Earth to put them into practice. So each time what you are trying to do is get better, so you balance out that karma, become a better person till eventually, I think they say they really compare this to the Christ, even though they don't talk religion, but the essence of Christ and the goodness he was. And when you get to that point, then you no longer have to reincarnate. So it just, if you think about the karma, little things like you open a door for somebody, and that's a plus. If you walk in a room and you let the door slam behind you because you don't look to see who's behind you, that's a minus. So it's little things that balance out, not the great big things you get rewarded for on Earth. And it makes you think about what you do and how to become a better person. And this, which is why I choose to think that it is a possibility, because I thought the thinking was very spiritual, even though it was not necessarily religious. And I'll turn the mic back over to David.
Good points. Good points. I'm going to ask another question. Is it we or our soul that has the learning experience?
It's the soul that has the learning experience, and so you cannot reincarnate as an animal. We
Right.
always reincarnate as a human, but we also have to reincarnate in different sexes, different races, different religions, so you become rounded in everything. So like in your next go around, you may wind up being a slave in Africa. And you learn from there, and they say, and in some of this thinking that the people who are super bad, they wait in line, basically their souls wait in line to reincarnate into a body, for example, that may wind up as a paraplegic. So they suffer their entire life on Earth, which then balances out a lot of bad karma. It's very interesting to read a New Age thinking just on karma and that kind of thing, because it really makes you think about how you live your life. And in any religion, that's a good thing.
Okay, very good point. Any comments about I know we've gone off on a tangent here, but any further comments about soul in Judaism? Yes, Mary.
When I conduct funerals and memorial services, I say about soul is the soul is the memories that we had, the memories that people have from us, the way that we touch people. That's what remains from us. That's the soul. So if, like the lady said, if we were nasty, that's the soul that will remain. But the soul is that kind of thing that does not die because it continues in what we remember, in our memories. That's my take.
Marty?
Okay. Yes, Michael. Thank you, Mary.
I think they think that having what the lady said about reincarnation and what all the things that she went through, and in Judaism, I think that's the whole purpose of the Torah is a writing on how one should live their life from beginning to end.
Good points. Good
You know,
points.
to live a good, decent life. And the one of the factors in the center of the soul is about giving charity, tzedakah, and being a good person to your treat yourself as you treat your neighbor as you treat yourself, and all of these things to produce hopefully a good human being.
Good points. Very good points. Yes, Helene.
Well, isn't Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, doesn't that tie into the soul? You must evaluate who you are, what you've done, and to confess and ask for so that all fits together, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
It does. And the phrase that you're searching for in Hebrew is cheshbon nefesh, which is a self-analysis of the soul, a reflection upon who you are, what you've done, and what you want to be and what you want to do in the future. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a good plug. Get ready for the cheshbon nefesh. Pastor Bruce was quoting from the Deuteronomy. That's a hook from the Torah portion on Yom Kippur morning.
Yes.
Choose life. All of these choices are laid out in front of us, but ultimately the value that is the highest for us is to choose life.
And that also brings us to some secular writings on the subject. There are a lot of them. John Donne's First Anniversary on the Progress of the Soul, Nosce Te Ipsum, very major Renaissance works dedicated to the idea about the progress of the soul after death.
Good point. Very good.
Studied that in graduate school.
Good memory.
Very good.
Well, thanks.
Well, any further discussion on this? Well, let's move on. And we now are at verse 12. If somebody would care to pick up reading.
Don't let the names frighten you. It's okay.
That's right. And again, these are important.
I'll be happy to go on if no one else
Okay,
wants.
thank you, David.
Okay. Now, these are the generations of Ishmael, Abraham's son, whom Hagar the Egyptian, Sarah's handmaid, bore unto Abraham. And these are the names of the sons of Ishmael, by their names according to their generations. The firstborn of Ishmael, Nebaioth, and Kedar, and Adbeel, and Misham, and Mishma, and Duma, and Massa, Hadad, and Tima, Chetur, Napish, and Kedem. Do you want me to go on?
Yeah, well, yes, you might as well. You might as well.
Okay, these are the sons of Ishmael, and these are their names by their villages and by their encampments, 12 princes according to their nations. And these are the years of the life of Ishmael, 137 years. Boy, they knew how to live back then. And he expired and died and was gathered unto his people. And they dwelt from Havilah unto Shur, that is before Egypt, as thou goest toward Ashur, over against all his brethren he did settle.
Okay. Anything stand out in this passage, in what was just read? Yes, Chris. And then, yes, and then Suzanne.
At the beginning of the writing, it describes Hagar to be a slave, not a concubine to Abraham. I never noticed that before. So that means that only one time Sarah was with Abraham to conceive Ishmael?
Well, how does Sarah come about acquiring Hagar?
It was a maid.
Yes, there was the maid, there was the servant
Yeah,
And from where?
from Egypt.
Right,
Egypt,
right. And what does Sarah do to what is her, if you will, it's a large gift to Abraham. What does she do?
Offered it to Abraham for the child.
As a concubine, right?
Right,
But
but
she still
okay,
belongs to, is property, if you will, property of
of
Sarah.
Abraham, right, and Sarah, right,
Right.
okay.
Any further discussion? I thought I saw, yes, Suzanne, I apologize. Yes.
Now I can't find it, but there were 12 sons, so
Yes.
it mirrors what's going to happen with Jacob's.
Very good. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So any other comments? Rabbi Roman.
I just double checked. I was fairly confident that whoever it was who picked up on Sarah being described here or translated as a slave, but it's the same term with which we are introduced to her several chapters ago.
Mhm.
It's it's like her handmaiden, so to speak, but definitely not the same term as concubine, where there's a
Right.
different relationship between Abraham and Hagar as opposed to the other concubines who are unnamed.
Thank you, Rabbi. Mhm.
Any other discussion on this? Okay, so we can. Any other comments?
I just wanted to ask the rabbi
Okay, Steve.
what term he was referring to.
Shifcha.
Shifcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Is what Hagar is referred to.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we are now ready to begin a new. It's a continuation of the story of Isaac, but things are going to take a little twist here. And if somebody would like to begin verse 19.
And sometimes you wonder why, it's a new parsha, it's a new portion.
Yes.
It's not a new chapter. So there's a difference of opinion between those who were breaking up the story into weekly portions and those who are breaking up the literature into chapter and verse for
Right.
some reason. I don't know if we want
That's
to try to go there or try to understand why they made a distinction, but there is.
Very interesting. Gail, would you like to read?
Oh, okay. I'm reading from Friedman.
That's fine.
And these are the records of Isaac, son of Abraham. Abraham had fathered Isaac, and Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah, daughter of Bethuel, the Aramean from Padam Aram, sister of Laban, the Aramean, to him as a wife. And Isaac prayed to the Lord for his wife because she was infertile. And the Lord was prevailed upon by him, and his wife Rebekah became pregnant. And the children struggled inside her, and she said, "If it's like this, why do I exist?" And she went to inquire of the Lord. And the Lord said to her, "Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples will be dispersed from your insides. And one people will be mightier than the other people, and the older, the younger will serve. And her days
We can stop there.
Okay.
Okay. Does this story sound similar to any other story that we've been reading? Yes, Gail.
I'd just like to read the commentary that Friedman has about.
Okay, sure.
He said, these are the records of Isaac. Isaac's life is different from his father Abraham's and his son Jacob's. Unlike them, he never leaves the promised land. He never fights. He has only one wife. His name is not changed. He is pictured going to meditate. He lives the longest. There are fewer stories about him. He is a relatively passive figure acted on by his father and his wife and his son. Why is he different? Presumably because he had once lain on an altar as a sacrifice to God. Even though the sacrifice is not consummated, his life is now consecrated, and his life is distinct after this. The actions that parents take regarding their children impact on their children's lives ever after. Amen to that.
Amen to that.
Amen to that.
Well, if
Really good.
you know, if you put yourself in a situation where your life is on the line and you survive that situation, that does alter your behavior
Of course.
a lot. Can you think of other individuals, whether in Torah or elsewhere, where that has been a pivotal point in their life to make them more passive or more aggressive? It could go either way. Any ideas? Or is this just a one-time occurrence? Yes, Rabbi Miri and Chris.
Can think of Moshe seeing the burning bush as an event that really changes his life. Until there, he was a shepherd and had nothing to do with the people of Israel. So I think that this is a turning point in his life.
Okay. So yes, Chris, you had your hand up. Yes, another example? You have to unmute yourself.
Unmute me, yeah.
There you go.
I forget that I have it that way. I just think that this example applies to all of us when we have that personal encounter with God, and He has been well, it is that miracle that occurs in your life. So you change, you have a different way to look at life in general when you've been rescued out of the pit. In other words, like Isaac was. You know, I think you have that opportunity to change your life, especially if it started, like in his case, a very early age. You have a lot more to prove, I guess, how much he touched your life and make it different.
Good points. Good points. Any other discussion on that?
Marty, I don't really have a discussion necessarily, but it has always bothered me when thinking about Isaac. He didn't really have a father, a role model.
You're right.
You know, he had a father, but a father, look at all the things that the father did that he chose not to emulate.
Right.
We come almost immediately after we were hearing that, while Abraham certainly willed his estate to Isaac, but Abraham died blessed in everything and died, we said, contented or satisfied and whatever. And Isaac is saying, is that what I have to do to have a good life? I'm going to focus on what's here and now. And so immediately, one of the first things that we hear about Isaac is that he's praying on behalf of his wife, not praying that he's going to have the same kind of satisfaction and contentment and wealth and prosperity that his father had, right? His concern is much more practical for
Yes.
for his wife, and that he's going to have progeny as well. I see an interesting contrast.
There are a lot of differences between Isaac and Abraham. One is he lives in the same area, doesn't go anywhere else. While Abraham is a nomad. So that's for starters. I would venture to say that Abraham is a man of passions both, and it goes all in every part of his life, as opposed to Isaac. We don't know very much about passion other than the wells that he keeps redigging. He's agriculturally oriented as opposed to a nomadic existence. Yes, Ruth Ann.
You think it could be because, like Rabbi was saying, he didn't have his father wasn't a real father figure, but there were a lot of other men, living in Abraham's household, and probably one of the servants was his role model. And so he's living more of a life of what the servants would have lived than what Abraham would have lived, because that's where his role models were.
So are we trying to say that you can become a role model for people?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Versus a role model for your family?
Both.
All of it.
Can you be, is it always necessary to be one or the other?
No.
Or is it, or can some people?
Sometimes you're different.
That's right.
Absolutely. Your public persona and your private persona.
That's right. Yes, Chris, you had.
I totally agree with that, and I think sometimes your role model is not necessarily good, and you're not watching what other people is. So you have to be responsible of how you portray yourself onto the world, because everybody's watching, and what you say not necessarily is what you mean. So.
Okay, very good. Any other discussion on that?
Yeah, I have
yes,
a
David,
comment.
and then Helene.
I remember asking my dad once if our rabbi at the Montreal synagogue we were members of keeps tabs on how many of us go to services and when.
Of course.
Dad was very strong about that. He said, no, our rabbi doesn't care about that. What he cares about is the kind of life people live. And that goes again to the secular piece, Sir John Davies, in his orchestra, where he describes the role of humanity as imitating that of the cosmic spheres. He goes into that both in orchestra and in Davies' other work, Nos Tapes and Progress of the Soul.
Good points. Very good points.
Thanks.
Yes, Helene.
Today, we have so many grandparents that are not able to be with their grandchildren. And the parents are starting to be wise enough to look for other older good people to be role models, to be adopted grandparents, what I call grand friendships. So the children can still get the wisdom and the love of children. You don't have to be related. The volunteers do this. So I think what we have to remember, and particularly in this difficult time, that we all need role models. I know I need them for my aunts that I was very close to, and I'm finding some here. And I know this is true. So I wanted to say that.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, Michael.
Thank you. The assumption the word role model in my estimation, implies something positive. When you hear the word role model, it takes on the assumption of something, of the word positiveness. And if a person is of a good character and is presumed a positive role model, then everyone will benefit from that. Not only the family, but everybody around, everybody. There's no exclusions unless somebody chooses not to.
Good point. Good point. Any other discussion or comments? Yes, Pastor Bruce.
Just in this section that Gail read for us, just a couple things that I felt. Wow, I disappeared for a minute. I felt like there were some really cool things here that the combination of, you know, the Sarah and Rebecca and conceiving, and the fact that there was definitely divine intervention, but I really think it's really very important for us to recognize the God speaking directly here. I just think that's really cool. I just think that's really cool.
Ooh.
God speaking directly to this woman. He's not even speaking directly to Isaac yet. He's speaking to his wife. I think that's a pretty cool thing. That's all.
And just a footnote that the synonym for role model is teacher, which I think is very, very important to remember.
Yes. It's a very good point. And I think and we have all, however, we have all experienced good teachers and not so good teachers. And each one has his or her own style. I think it's important for us to think about that. We don't have to necessarily go into all of those ramifications here, but I think that it is important. Do you remember your bad teachers?
I don't think I had any bad teachers. I think they were all excellent teachers, every one of them.
When I look back on my education, I remember each one of them. And they all had something positive to emulate.
Exactly.
I agree with you, David. That's right. And also, not necessarily just the people who are labeled teachers. I kept learning from lots of different people, including janitors and nurses and other individuals around me all the time. I have not, so I think there's what you say, I'm just going to extend it a little bit, how we use the word teacher. I see a whole bunch of hands now coming. First Suzanne, then Steve, then Michael.
Don't forget me.
Yeah.
I didn't, I said you're number 3. Okay, Suzanne, yes.
Well, I remember good teachers, but the bad teachers I definitely remember because of actions they did that hurt me deeply, and I even would kid that I was scarred for life. One was my 3rd grade music teacher who banned me from singing in music class. Okay, I can't sing. But it's humiliating when you're a kid, and I guess I was singing off key, and she went around the room making each person sing a few bars. And when it got to my turn, she blamed me for whatever was wrong, and I was never allowed to sing. And that was a terrible. Her name was Miss Davies, and I've never forgotten that. And
Sure.
Then I think it was 2nd grade. The art teacher ripped up my painting. I was.
He did what?
Where did you go to school?
This was a public grade school in Pittsburgh.
That's the problem.
Oh,
And I was painting, there was a park nearby, and I was painting like the swing set, and I had painted green underneath of it. And then I remembered that there was asphalt underneath it. So I changed it and was painting some gray because I was trying to be realistic. And she decided that she did not like the gray, and she just picked up my painting and ripped it.
oh,
Again, in front of people, and yelled at me for it. And that was Mrs. Kearney. And to this day, I don't like art. I've never really cared for pictures or paintings. I mean, it's just,
yeah, that can
know,
happen.
so
Everybody, you
that
know,
teacher-
Susan and I went to the same public school system, and I didn't have those experiences.
Okay. I know Michael is Steve, and then Mike. I forget who is first now, but I know.
I think it's my turn. I don't
Excuse
know.
me.
I think it's my turn.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Mike. Yeah, I just wanted to elaborate on what Suzanne said, that there's kind of a common denominator among many of the bad teachers, and unfortunately there are bad teachers. They're the ones who take it upon themselves to tell a particular student, you'll never amount to anything. And almost invariably, they're wrong, okay? Because very successful people can probably point to a teacher in their past who said, you'll never be anything, you know, or, you know, just drop out of the engineering course and learn to be a cook or something, you know. I think a good teacher, you know, the good teacher, good role model, you have to be able to see the positive in anyone, and not, you know, the rush to judgment on people is our enemy. And if you're going to rush to judgment and fit little kids into categories very quickly, you're not really doing your job, okay? You want to give people potential, you have to give them encouragement.
Agree 100%.
Yeah.
Michael, and then Helene, and then Rabbi.
I prefer to see teachers as a positive teacher or a negative teacher. I like to see it in those terms. And it goes beyond, in my observation, it goes beyond the classroom. When you're younger and you're working for older people, I can give you quickly an example in my own situation. At about the age of 14 years old, I was bagging groceries in a supermarket in the Bronx, where I was born and raised. And the cashier gave me some money and go to the cage. That's where the manager was, where you went to get change. So I can give it to the cashier. She needed maybe quarters and nickels or dimes, whatever the case was. And I said to this person who was my boss, I looked at him as a teacher. And he yelled at me because I said the word thank you. He says, that's my job. You're not supposed to say that to me.
Yes, you are.
Of course. If somebody is doing, no matter where you are, what you're doing, if somebody does something, that's what I was taught at home. And so that I never forgot. That was a real striking situation for me. And one other thing about teachers, a positive teacher will not try to indoctrinate a student in any way. That is very, very critical. And today, I'm not going to get into politics, none of that crap. So this allows me to speak in an open way and a free way. Today, beyond teaching, you have professors, college professors, and across this country, and almost all of them, they tell their students, they try to indoctrinate their students on how to do certain things. And that's a negative teacher. Instead of telling the student, do some research these things for yourself, and come up with the best answer for yourself, instead of trying to indoctrinate.
Good point. Good points. Helene, you've been waiting very patiently.
It's okay. It just happens that when I taught students, early childhood students at the community college, and I taught a course on
Helene, somehow Helene, you're not coming through. Somehow your microphone is off.
And you know what?
Okay.
You know what? How many would come up and sing a song? The same story I just heard. Because the teacher said you haven't got a good voice. And the same way with art. People hurt when they're put down, and children never forget being made fun of. Never forget that criticism. I just want to reinforce that was my whole goal, to see what Michael just said. What does the child want, not what does the adult want?
Good point also. Grace has been at it, and also Pastor Bruce. They have been making comments on our chat side, and Grace mentioned that she had learned a lot from watching the mistakes my friends made. And also, I think that's who it was. Maybe I'm wrong, because I only have a number here, not...
It was Amy.
It was
Amy Storer.
Oh, okay. I apologize. Amy, okay. And she said she learned a lot from watching the mistakes my friends made. And yes, that is a very important comment. Grace mentioned she was homeschooled much of the time and experienced very unusual circumstances. College was my best years of growing up and learning to enjoy reading and study practice. Yes. So, and Pastor Bruce, before he left, he said, he just made a little comment about Psalm 100. Make a joyful noise to the Lord, all ye serve the Lord with gladness, and go from there. But I think that every one of us have had life learning experiences from time to time. Rabbi, I know your hand was up, and I think Chris's hand was up in that order, and then David again.
So I make reference to two very famous quotations about teaching. One comes from Pirkei Avot, Ethics of the Fathers, if you will, in the Mishnah, that while we learn much from our teachers, we learn even more from our associates and our family members, our contemporaries, but we learn the most from our own students. So our own students are really the best teachers for us, whether it's in formal education, whether it's role modeling, as we've been speaking about before. That's number one. Number two, I also refer to the one of my quote unquote rabbis, meaning teachers in that sense, the late Harry Chapin, folk singer, and look up the lyrics to his song that's called Flowers Are Red, about how different teachers encourage or discourage a student learning who wants to express himself with painting in different colors. So that's what I wanted to share.
Very good. That would be interesting. I will look that up. Thank you.
Yeah, Harry Chapin and the lyrics to the song "Flowers Are Red."
Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Chris, you had your hand up.
I just want to say that all lessons comes in different packages.
Right.
All good things really comes in different packages. It can come from negative people and bad people, but I think if you think about it and you look at it from a different perspective, or know who you are, then nothing is going to hurt you. On the contrary, it will put you in a different, you will learn something from it, whether it was a negative thing or a negative person or a bad teaching. I strongly feel that way, because some of the most difficult lessons I have learned come in a terrible picture of the sign or you know, conduit, and the result is still good. That's what I wanted to share.
Thank you. David, before did you have your hand up before?
Yes.
Okay, and then Steve.
Yeah. Just to go back to what Suzanne had said, which really kind of bothered me a bit, that there are teachers capable of doing such a thing. The only similar thing that happened to me was in the first grade, where I wrote a composition called A Park, and it got returned marked wrong. But I don't see that as a negative thing. But I think the teacher just wanted me to write it again to get it right.
Exactly.
And but nobody has ever taken something I've done and just torn it up. And I think that's just totally.
I usually don't do this, but I'm going to suggest if you have a copy of David's biography, if you will. A lot of our discussion today dovetails into that, and David has some very good insights in his book. Thank you. Yes, Steve, and then Michael.
Yeah. And I have another little rabbinical quote. I hope I'm not mangling it. I'll ask the rabbis to correct me and maybe give the source, but it's also related to this pedagogical theory discussion, and it's Ein hakapdan melamed ve'ein habaishan lomed. And what that means is, somebody who's overly rigid and strict shouldn't really be a teacher, and if you're too shy, you don't have any chance of learning. You can't be a student. In other words, there's a lot needed in, it's Perkei Avot also. Okay, did I quote it correctly or did I reverse it? I don't know.
No, you had it correct. Yeah,
but basically, yeah, if you're sort of very unaccepting of anything that goes outside the mold or the frame, or somebody who's thinking outside the box a little bit, and you're just going to shut them down. That's not good teaching. And,
correct.
But if you want to be a student, you just have to get over your shyness, and say what's on your mind and ask all your questions too. So it's not only the teacher, there's a student responsibility here as well.
Good.
Michael, you're next.
I just wanted to reinforce the word encourage. Encourage is extremely important in teaching. I see it as one of the most important components to teach somebody, because you can always be negative. You can always find something here and there. You can nitpick, but no matter what it is, from that arises a perfect opportunity to teach, to encourage.
Right.
So what happened to Suzanne was just horrible, because there you go with a negative, a bad or a negative teacher. And that doesn't look good. It looks worse for the teacher than discouraging a student or somebody trying to encourage. It's the opposite.
That's right. Very good. Yes, Rabbi Mary. You're muted.
I just want to go to the English word for educate. And when I teach, I've been teaching teachers, and I emphasized the difference between teaching and educating. And probably educating is what most of you have said. And the source of the word educate means to draw out. So it's to approach the person and to draw out the qualities and the talents and of that person. No, sorry, I said instead. There is a difference between schooling and educating.
Good, very good point. Very good point. I think what we have just gone through is the comparison. Well, we've gone through the life of Isaac, because there's a lot of commentary that says he was, and I'm going to, I don't know who said it, but a man of the book. And so what we just did is an exercise, what may have been going on in the mind of Isaac, as opposed to what we went through when we were discussing the mind of Abraham. He was a doer, but a doer, taking action is not always physical. There are lots of times that taking action occurs verbally. It is expressed by many authors. I just finished a book, and it is called Spaceman of Bohemia. And it takes place, the writer is Czechoslovakian. And in it, the writer does a beautiful job of weaving science and astronomy with politics and history and art and music and so many other subjects, and philosophy and spirituality. It's a very interesting book, well worth reading, because it covers all of this. And maybe this is what some of the rabbis of old were talking about when they say that Isaac was a different person, that he was this type of person. And we've been discussing it. And that was, so I think we can now go back into Torah, now that we've experienced some of Isaac's personality. So let's jump over to Rebecca. And she had, obviously she's having a difficult pregnancy. All women go through this when they're pregnant. They experience kicking of their baby. Sometimes it's a fist or a hand that's pushing up. Sometimes it's just a foot that's pushing out. But here she has twins. And they are both very active inside the womb, and so she's having some problems. Any comments? Guys can't relate to this as well as women. So those people who have experienced this during pregnancy, what goes on in your mind during this time? I mean, as a guy, come put your hand here, you'll feel the baby kick. Oh yeah, there's something in there that's alive. But what is the woman going through?
Fear.
Fear, if I heard it correctly, fear was mentioned. What else? Yes, All of a
Yeah, I
sudden, the
didn't go
guys
through
are
pregnancy.
talking.
I didn't go through pregnancy. I don't know if you're officially restricting the answers to the females, but
Oh, no, I was trying to do usually.
but I'm understandingly, as usual, you know, I see things very simply. She's saying, "Oh God, I want to die." Just read it literally. What it's saying, it's saying, "This is horrible. I want to die."
I know.
You know, and you know, Sunette isn't around. I've heard Sunette say that when she's.
She's also she's by herself in a new area. Her mother's not there.
That's right.
You know, and
Yeah.
so who's she going to go to ask? Is this normal?
That's right. Ruth Ann, you were going to say
Well,
something.
I'm sure there were other women around
Yeah.
in the community that she could ask. She probably had servants and what, you know, but I can see her as being with twins, if they were both active and probably active at different times. I mean, you know, ladies, we all know how nice it was when the baby was sleeping, and hopefully the baby was sleeping while we wanted to sleep. But, you know, Rebecca probably still had a full-time job. And she probably was just tired. I mean, we've all gone through that. Even if after the baby was born, it's like you can't get any sleep and you can't rest yourself. And yeah, that's why when you want it to be over and done with. And I'm sure that's what she was going through.
Okay, Chris, yes.
Well, I think that what Rosanna is saying is so clear, and for all of us who had one child at the time, that's a little nicer. But when you have two, and I think that will be, or six, like some of these people are really brave to have, it will be war inside of you, I am sure.
Mm-hmm.
So I think being that there were twins, I don't think they already have their personality, as a matter of fact, by the way they were acting, you know, and so that's kind of strange.
That's
But,
what's being implied, yes.
yeah.
Any other comments here? Well, what does Isaac do? Before we get to Rebecca, what does Isaac do? It says in verse 21 that he pleads with the Lord on behalf of his wife.
Yeah.
Okay, because the struggle was going on in the womb. Because
no, that's before.
She was barren. Because she was barren.
Yeah.
And you know, but this is what happens, and then Rebecca says, "Oh my goodness, why do I exist? What's going on here?" And then she receives an answer from God. God tells her, this was brought up before, and that it's going to be two nations that are going to be in conflict in various degrees. Any further comments about that or questions? Yes.
Marty, could it be that after Isaac, after seeing what went on with Abraham, his father, and Ishmael and all the other, you know, children of the concubines, that Isaac just didn't want to go through that bit of having a concubine? I mean, it was like, I got a wife, we can have children. Come on, God, you know, I don't want to go through all that. I mean, again, he just did not want to repeat history. So it was important to have a child with Rebecca.
Sure. Yes, Rabbi Mary.
Well, I want to draw the attention to the issue of being barren. We saw that already at Sarah, and we see it at Rivka, and we're going to see it at Rachel. And it's a theme that comes through talking about women. And then we have Hannah and the praying, and then a miracle happens. So it's you know, when we talk about fairy tales, that usually the third son who's the whatever, he's the one that gets the inheritance or whatever. But it's a very interesting theme to think about.
Sometimes you get more than you prayed for.
There you go. Yes, Ruth Ann.
Marty, and I was going to say, and we have no proof from this because of what we know of Isaac's life, that it was Rebecca who had the problem. It may have been Isaac all along.
Ah.
You know, since there were no concubines, no other instances where he could prove his fertility, how do we know he wasn't the problem?
Well, he should have gone to be tested.
So just as a sidebar, for those of you that don't know, according to the rabbis, they explain why the two boys are fighting in the womb. Okay, why are they? They're arguing. Let me out, let me out, let me out, and they picture that as Rebecca is walking through town, whenever she passes a house of ill repute, or a tavern or a saloon or something, that's Esau is saying, let me out, let me out, let me out. And whenever she passes a school, a yeshiva, an academy, then it's Yaakov, it's Jacob, who's, no, it's mine, I'm going out, I would need to get into life, I need to study quickly.
That's so cute.
I thought you were going to conclude this with a line that this occurs in New Orleans.
Yeah, probably.
There were other academies of higher learning.
No. What's the source of that story? That's an interesting story. What's the source of that?
Oh, it's in the Talmud. It's in the Talmud and the Midrash. I don't know. We can look up the exact reference, but
they were male rabbis.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, no.
I'm just saying. If Rabbi Miri was going to write Midrash, I'm sure it'd be quite different from her perspective.
Well, they have to explain that later on. The Midrash says that Jacob, was a mama's boy, and he stayed all the time studying Talmud. So that boy.
Yeah, Marty?
Yes, Steve.
Yeah, and the word itself, hitrotzetsu, lehitrotzetz, it doesn't just mean you're moving a little bit. It means, correct me if I'm wrong, rabbis, it means you are running around.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how much room is there to run around inside there? So you can imagine how uncomfortable it was for Rivka. You know, it's not just saying, the text doesn't say they were moving around a little bit, they were kicking, they were running. Lehitrotzetz is like running yourself, like really just running around like a maniac. So
Steve,
they were running in there.
Incident, you asked for the source. It's Genesis Rabbah, chapter 63.
Okay.
Wonderful story.
Very good. Well, would somebody like to read from verse 24?
I just have a question.
Oh, okay.
To Rabbi. The word le'om and goy as people, as a nation, I don't recall seeing it. Am I right?
Well, we just saw one of the names of Abraham's grandsons was Le'umim. I think that's where it comes from, if I remember right.
Yeah, שני לאומים ממאיך יפרדו, לאום מלאום. But the word le'om versus am or even goy.
No, because I think le'um is with an aleph and yes. Am is with an ayin. Where did we
Right.
just see?
What I'm saying is that I haven't seen Leom, which Israel adopted. I mean, today.
Ishmael's sons.
That's verse, it's 25:3.
25:3, right.
No, oh, there is the word Leom.
Yeah, ula umim, right. It's in the plural. That's one of the names. It's one of the names of Keturah's, Abraham and Keturah's grandsons.
Right.
24:3.
25:3.
25:3.
Okay.
Well, while we're doing that, why don't we try to finish up? What time is it? Yeah, we have a little time. If we want to,
Steve, did you do your etymological search
I
for
did.
Leum?
I did. Yeah. I have something if I can insert that here.
Oh, sure.
Because we were discussing the word. Here, so Leom, here it says, Leumim, nation, people, related to Akkadian, which means thousand in Akkadian. Okay, Ugaritic, it's a people or a crowd. Arabic, la'ama, he gathered together, assembled. So, and it also means to nationalize. So apparently it's a legitimate word,
Yeah, of course. I don't have any doubt.
No, but that's its origin, I mean.
Yeah, but I think that one of the nice things that I'll say to myself will be le'em. Since they are not mekudot, it will be to a mother. So the group of people that belong to a mother.
Okay, very good. Boy, I appreciate what's, going back to the root words. It really does add a lot to the discussion. Shall we read verse 25?
I'll be happy to.
24 through 26, if somebody would like to do that. And
yeah, I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you, David.
And when her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb. And the first came forth ruddy, all over like a hairy mantle, and they called his name Esau. And after that came forth his brother, and his hand had been on Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob. And Isaac was 80 years old when she bore them.
Okay, let's stop at that point. But because I'm sure we can have a little discussion here. First, anyone have any comments or ideas? Yes, Steve.
Yeah, and this is something I've mentioned before. It's not my original idea. I'm not that smart. This is sort of a medical drash. Is Esau was covered with hair. He was virilized at birth. He had hirsutism. That can be a symptom of something called adrenogenital syndrome, where there is a metabolic block in the the synthesis of adrenal hormones.
Very good point.
And it can cause later on for that person to suffer from episodes of hypoglycemia, legitimate, true hypoglycemia. And later on, we will see that Esau was willing to sell his birthright
for food,
pot of pottage.
He's always famished.
Because he was, not because he was just impatient. He probably
was famished.
Yes.
Legitimately suffered, according to this medical drosh, okay?
Yeah.
He legitimately was having an episode of hypoglycemia and needed something life-saving, So
it may have been real.
He said, you know what, just give it to me. I'll give you whatever you want, Just
Very good point. Very good point.
So,
it's going to come up later.
Adrenogenital syndrome.
It's very possible. Any other comments about the names?
Not about the names, but what I wanted to say was that Isaac was 40 years old when he got married, but it's 20 years later when the children are born. So they were married a long time before they had kids, 20 years.
Agree?
Hey, don't count numbers.
It's okay. I one day, not here, but I had an occasion as a medical student to treat a fellow who was 92. And he was a retired clown from the old Barnum and Bailey Circus. And he and I will tell you about his story some other time. But he was let's put it this way, he was very active at the age of 92. More power to him.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay, yes, Suzanne. You're muted, Suzanne.
Sorry. What does the name Esau mean?
Ah, okay. Well, okay, and what it is, I have some information here in Rabbi Plout says possibly related to the Arabic atha, thick-haired, and the synonym of sa'ir, a wordplay on hair, sehar. Esau resembles the uncivilized man of Gilgamesh. And Kidu, who has shaggy hair and lives in open spaces. Esau is later also known as Edom, red. And they probably, all these different names were geographical names as well, which in their application to the son of Isaac became largely interchangeable in the Bible. So he was ready, as Steve points out, and there may be others. First, Rabbi Norman, and then Rabbi Mary.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting, curious wordplay here. Again, and it's in the Hebrew, so it's difficult for people to see it necessarily. But we were just talking about, Rabbi Miri had asked about the word la'om and whatever, and then the first verb in verse 14, v'yimla'u, is the same letters, but mixed up in a different way. So there's literary connection between this. Well, here's a new people that's going to be started as her days are completed, and whatever. There's play on that. Then there's also we have to remember, we just kind of glossed over it, that Yaakov gets his name because he was grasping onto the heel of Esau, and heel has a negative connotation, and he's known as someone who has this negative connotation with his name, and has to live with that in his earlier years until eventually he has the name change, and then becomes known and carries on the heritage as Yisrael. Israel is one that's his legacy, is one who strives and struggles with God, rather than someone who kind of, the only reason that he came into life and came into this was because he was holding on to his brother and holding on to that which others had done for him and led him into life. So it's very interesting wordplay in the Hebrew there.
Okay. Rabbi Mary, you had your hand up too.
Well, it's a quick one about what Rashi says about the name. And he said, Esav, the name means completely developed. Everyone called him because he had so much hair as a child, several years older. That's Rashi.
Okay. Any other comments or discussion? So we've covered Jacob as well as Esau. I found something also, just an interesting commentary by a fellow with the last name Jeremias, who found that the ancient circle motif in Jacob's holding onto Esau's heel, and he compared it to the Eve and snake circle. Jacob in turn fears that Esau will try to crush him. Okay, this is just another commentary. So at this time, I know time is up, but Ruth Ann, did you have any announcements, or Rabbi Roman, Steve?
I just wanted to put in a plug for my Thursday.
Sure.
That I had a lot of fun doing it. I had called it the Jews of Southern Africa, but it turned out really to be the Jews of Rhodesia, which in itself is a pretty big topic. And I had a lot of help from Sunet and other sources. It's a very unique Jewish community, and the usual thing happened to me, like happened with the Civil War topic. I only got halfway through it, so I'm going to do the other half next Thursday, and everybody is invited. Anybody who's not doing anything better, and it's 10 o'clock, the usual time. And yeah, next week is going to be my last week here. I'm going to Yuma to work, but yeah, I mean, the good thing about this pandemic, the only good thing is that everything is online now, so it doesn't matter where you are. I could be in Yuma, I could be in Minnesota, I could be in Maine,
Well, if you're going to be in Yuma, be careful of the 310 train.
Okay. Yeah, I know you're making jokes. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, oh, the old Western, right?
Yeah.
To Yuma. Yeah. You remember Johnny Yuma was a rebel?
Oh, yeah.
Through the West. Yeah.
That's right. It was a great program. Yes, Michael, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I was thinking about something this morning that Steve just said something about the good thing about this pandemic, or something to that effect. And I was thinking about a discussion on, since we have this pandemic and since the beginning of it, what if any good has come out of it? Things like how we communicate, what benefit do we have communicating the way we do, and the things of that nature. What people think of different things, and if the things that we could look at as a positive aspect from this pandemic, because we all most of it look at it from a negative side, which it is. But within all of that, there's got to be some things that we're learning about ourselves, things that we could look for the future. God forbid if this happens again, what we can do, what we've learned for this. So those dynamics, those type of things.
Okay. Very good. Any other comments or discussion? Yes, Rabbi Mary.
I would like to refer to Rabbi Norman. Can you stay? I sent you a message, you probably didn't see it, a chat. Can you stay in the Zoom after we finish? Just a couple.
For a minute or two, Ken. Yeah.